Welcome on our next webinar. Today we have again a special guest, Michael Drogalis. So I'm super happy that Michael decided and agreed to join our session and talk with us about his product, Shadow Traffic, and most importantly, the journey about how did he got there. So I of course know Michael from the internet. I was following and seeing from time to time on various social media, but then I watched the episode of the Developer Voices. It's a great podcast, so highly recommend it. And where he was also sharing his story, and I said like, yeah, it would be great if I had more chance to talk with him about his solopreneurship or entrepreneurship or product building or whatever we call it. Hi, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me, Oscar. I really appreciate it.
um, so I have a first question. Is the first idea always the best one?
Probably not. Yeah, this comes up a lot. I've really tried to get better at product validation over the years. I've built a lot of things that no one's ever used. I think you kind of have to figure out how to build products that people actually like. No, your first idea probably is the best one. I think I would say like two things. Number one, it's a good idea to try to figure out how to validate things as fast as you can. I think a lot of people try to go build a startup. They have an idea they're excited about, and then they'll spend like 2 years trying to make it work. Whereas you'd probably be better off coming up with a list of like 10 ideas and then trying to validate each one, and take it maybe a month or 2 weeks or something like that to see if there's anything there. So I think that can often kind of help escape the trap of feeling like, this idea must succeed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I fully agree. I fully agree to that. It was also like the partial joke, the half joke about I was referring that you wanted to build the fourth startups in 4 quarters, and it appeared that quite soon you realized that Shadow Traffic would be the one, right?
Yeah, it's I actually missed the humor on that. But yeah, it is funny. So yeah, the idea was do like a startup every quarter and then see if
Hmm.
they work. And it was this narrative backdrop to fail. Like it would be okay if two or three of them fail, or even four of them fail, because I'm just gonna try and see whatever worked. The first one happened to work though. Interestingly, it wasn't really the first one. I had previously worked at Confluent for 5 years, and the whole time I was there, I kind of knew I wanted to do a company again, and I was just searching for ideas. I had been working on this new kind of presentation software for like a year and a half, and I was doing it all wrong. I had the idea, I was very fixated on it, and I realized at the end there was no market. And so I guess that was actually idea number one that I just never told anybody about.
Mm.
And at some point when I realized that that was going to be a failure, I made my big list of ideas, and then number two actually happened to be one worth pursuing. But yeah, pretty lucky that this one worked out of the gate.
Yeah. So maybe could you briefly tell about this idea to the people, because not many. I think it's quite interesting because it on the first look it sounds pretty obvious, but then if you think about it, then it's hard to find similar products. Do you do you know why? So why creating tool that is seeding your systems with some example demo data is such a prolific idea.
Yeah, it's I kind of just tried to take inventory around me of where were people spending time, what did people find frustrating, what was a problem that was important, but not so important that you needed like a 24/7 support hotline that was going to be a really big deal. And so I just kind of observed those things over a couple of months and wrote them down. And the one that worked is Shadow Traffic. It's basically a synthetic data generator. Um, Significantly, I really just focus on streaming data, and I really try to carve out the niche of making it really easy to use with Kafka. I had
Mhm.
just sort of seen people do that over and over. And yeah, it works out. I tried to really master the use case of demo data. That went really well. And so I started expanding into helping sales engineers run POCs because they need to use synthetic data. I worked with software engineers now who do stress testing and load testing.
Mhm.
And I think the lesson is probably if you can find these little problems that really plague people, if you master that, you can slowly expand out to creep out and take more and more of the use case. And it doesn't always have to stay small. That's the best way to start, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you can't kind of grow up over time into something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you already mentioned a few interesting use cases, but do you think that it's important to have something like giving people a quick pill? Because, for instance, when I thought about shadow traffic and I did a bit of looking back to my projects, then there is always such case where you have like a really important meeting with a really important potential customer, and then you realize that, gosh, you have some crazy stupid names in your test data, and now you need to prepare everything from scratch, and then you just look on the watch and then you see like, okay, how do I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, I don't know. I think it's useful to focus on things that people are kind of always going to do. Like in this case, people are always going to test their software. They're always going to
Hmm.
demo it for other people. There's this quote from Jeff Bezos around like, what should Amazon have done? And he just said, we do the things that people always want. They're always going to want faster shipping. They're always going to want lower prices. And I think there's some product wisdom in there too. Like, what are the things in a community that people are always going to do? People are
Hmm.
always going to want better, easier builds for their software. They're always going to want better documentation, easier documentation. And I think kind of looking at it from that lens can be pretty helpful to figure out what's going to be a recurring need over time.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a good advice. So, was it like this idea more by talking with the others, or just looking on the struggles that you had in your projects, or probably a mix of both? But if you said that, like, how did you start it? How did you make the initial finding of those ideas? Because as you mentioned, you had a few of them, at least four you wanted to try. So how did you come up with knowing that, yeah, those are the ideas that are worth at least validating?
I just one day tried to write down as many as I could think of. There wasn't any particular order. I bumped shadow traffic to the top of the list because I felt like, okay, it aligns with my existing audience. I had some B2C ideas and some non-tech ideas that I thought would be kind of fun, but like I wanted a springboard that just gave me the best chance of success out of the gate. And so
Hmm.
I started with this. I did experience this pain pretty personally over the last 10 years. I've worked in streaming for a long time. I had seen other people basically, have that pain as well. And I think, I just tried to sort of marry that with an approach to letting me figure out um like can I see whether other people like commercially have this pain as well. And so I just tried to run a really quick process over like a 4 to 6 week period to figure out, is there anybody who's actually going to want to buy this thing?
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense to me. So, mm, how do you find who to ask? Because I think it's quite important because you mentioned that you reach out to a few people, but for instance, probably if you ask your family or your friends, then typically they will tap your shoulder and say that, yeah, yeah, it's a great idea. So do you have some advice or how to find those people worth reaching out?
Yeah, there's a phrase for what you're describing. It's called getting mommed. There's a blogger who wrote about that. Like, your mom will always tell you your ideas are good. Um, I think it helps to like pick a community that you want to serve and to say start with that, because then you could sort of like you sort of bound the scope of users to people who are aligned with your product. And then you want to go talk to as many of those as you can. And in my case, I've been pretty plugged into the Kafka community because I
Hmm.
worked at Confluent and I really like the technology. And so my social network kind of happened to align with that. But I did pretty much the same steps that you would do otherwise. I went on LinkedIn, I wrote about the problem. Anybody who engaged with it and said, yeah, I have that problem too. I chased all of them up, or at least anybody who said I recognize that problem. I tried to just have a Zoom with everybody that I could. I emailed everyone in my my friend network who uses this kind of tech, and just to get a litmus test. Um, and then once that started to look pretty good, I put a landing page up with a waiting list that basically just said, here's a little sneak peek of what the product could look like. Sign up when it's ready. And then anybody who signed up, I emailed them. I tried to talk to them, and that gave me at least 100 people to talk to live, and probably in total over email over 200 people.
Mhm. Yeah, I even remember this landing page without anything. So did you, was it like the idea how to run that? Because from this perspective, it sounds like you were quite well prepared on how to proceed. But was it like that a year ago? Because almost precisely a year ago that happened when you at least presented that on your newsletter. Or did you do some preparation? Like many of those ideas, I think, are like from Lean Startup, etc. They are presented there, or similar books. So did you, is it like part of your experience that you got in past projects, or did you do some, just preparation, learnings, etc.?
I've been kind of learning the past few years up until now about like the bigger mistakes. Like I've built a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff people don't want. I've built a lot of websites that don't make sense. And I didn't really like sit down and do any specific prep for this project. I try to work on like my web development skills once in a while. I try to put some time into writing and design because I think those are important. But no, I had like a sketch in my mind when I started about what like a good landing page would be. And it would be a good tagline, a good sub tagline, what's a good CTA, what could the product look like just barely so people could kind of understand what the user experience would be. And that was kind of it. And I think if you can get together like just sort of the basics in those areas to put together basic landing pages. I mean, anybody could do this. So there's
Yeah.
good tools out there to build landing pages right now that don't require a lot of coding skills. So a lot of it is like messaging work and user experience work that I think comes into the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm asking because um, definitely many people in our industry have a lot of ideas. Like in theory, even they believe that they are brilliant ideas, but they are shy to start, even to make those baby steps. I'm even talking about myself. Like I'm trying to stay afloat and in my own solopreneurship, and I know how hard was for me to just move this perspective that if you're doing something well, then you need to be paid for that, and if you're doing something for the community and for the people, then you need to ask for money. And many people, I know that they are struggling with even such basic stuff. Like I was definitely struggling and still to some degree. And many people are having a easy excuse like, yeah, I don't have like a big network of people. I don't have active social accounts, etc. Not many followers. It's much easier for those people that went initial part of their journey. So what would you say to those people if they, I know that, let's say that they really believe and they really want to start, but they have those first hardships to even how to move things forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say two things. So, number one, everybody starts at zero. Like no one's born with a big social
Yeah.
network. No one's born with the skills to do this. You just start wherever you are and you start going. Like when I began, I had like a decent sized following on Twitter, but I hadn't really put any effort into it for a few years. And so
Mm-hmm.
my social following was like effectively dead. Like I was starting from scratch. And so like it took me a while to grow it back up to where it is right now. But yeah, everybody starts with zero. And then the other thing I would say is that it can feel like if you got this idea and you feel kind of shy about it, like everything is a big deal. Like, do I have to go ask a customer for $100,000? Do I have to go talk to 200 people right now? And the answer is no. Like you could do much smaller things to move the ball forward. Like you can give your idea a try for 2 weeks. Can you build an extremely simple landing page and send it to 5 people that you know, and just try smaller things to get it rolling. And you just find that success kind of compounds on itself, or it doesn't, and then you find that an idea wasn't very good, and then you just move to the next one, and it's you try to enjoy the journey more than the destination of actually getting there, and enjoy the grind, as it were,
Mm.
I guess. I don't know
Yeah,
if that
like
makes sense, but that's my experience.
yeah, yeah. For me, it makes perfect sense. I also think that it is surprising, or it can be surprising for many people, that quite often when when we reach to other people, then they are feeling quite happy, or like that someone wants to know their opinion. So quite often when I started like on my journey on Twitter, I'm not active there anymore. But when I started, I was extremely surprised that, hey, those people are actually answering me if I ask the right questions. So it's not that hard as it seems at the beginning, I would say.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, just if we think about ourselves, if somebody asked us to help with something, we'd probably love to help. If it's somebody who's like well-meaning and a beginner and has a good idea, like I would love to pitch in. And
Yeah,
it's hard to imagine other people feeling that way, even though that's probably what you and I feel.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Uh, so my next question is like, let's say that someone decided to push the ball forward, and then um, you, that person maybe started to reach some other people and got some initial feedback, and then my question is like, because there is marketing and there is selling, and when I started, then for me it was the same thing. Like if I got more people, then I would get the more sales, and if I attract people to my product, I'm coming from an open source community. I'm really active in that space, and that it's super. I mean, it's easy to get a lot of people that maybe are interested in your tool, even using your tool, and even are happy with those tools, but they don't want to pay for that. So mm, do you also have this explicit split between the marketing and selling, or do you also envision that as probably not? My guess is that what is your distinction between those two
Yeah,
aspects?
my experience is I can only speak as someone who's only ever done B2B, is that there's a pretty hard split. The line can be a little bit blurry, but marketing is a function that raises awareness of people
Hmm.
to know about your product and like it, and then sales kind of converts them to actually pay for it. And so I do treat those two things as pretty separate. I think most all B2B companies do. I'm out there on LinkedIn publishing a lot of free content about engineering, startups, my experience, anything that people I think would find helpful. I just try to provide that as a free service. And then that raises awareness of what I'm doing. I don't try to put it in people's faces. People just sort of discover, oh, this guy's building this product, and that's a nice, coincidence to discover. And then, of the people who've found me, some percentage of those have the problem that I solve. And then, if they approach me or I approach them, then that kind of kicks off the sales relationship where you try to build a champion of someone who like really, really likes your stuff and is willing to kind of run through the gauntlet of their org. Every time you sell to a business, it's really hard and you need somebody who's very motivated to do it. You cannot do it without somebody who like really, really wants it internally. And yeah, there's just a whole side of the game to that, which is very difficult. The salespeople are actually really, really skilled. I didn't realize at the beginning of my career how hard their job is, but it's challenging and rewarding too.
Yeah, yeah. I think that especially for the developers marketing, I'm capable of getting people and getting some traction, but on selling, that's still in front of me and I have much respect also for those salespeople. It's incredibly hard thing to do, I would say.
Yeah,
And
yeah, totally.
so maybe let's going back to the marketing. I found on your newsletter on one of the editions that when you were explaining what you wrote and what content you'd like to put on your social, then you wrote that your entrepreneurial friends like the content, but for everyone else it's too in the weeds. So now my question is how to find what to write. Do you, how did you, or maybe how did you find like the content that is both interesting for you and reaching the people that you want to reach? Did you put some like a lot of thinking into that, or you just was writing about the stuff that are interesting for you?
It's a lot of trial and error. I mean, I think the goal is to just fill this point of view that nobody else has, that other people find interesting and is also aligned with your product. And so in the beginning, like what I thought was interesting is I think the psychology of business is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a background in psychology. I obviously have a background in business too now. And so I thought, could I put those two things together? Could I kind of like marry up psychological studies with real world experiences in business? And I sat down my very first 3 days of being a solopreneur. I worked on content of that nature for 8 hours a day. I wrote like it was something like 30 posts. I wrote quite a few like long form posts. If you go back to the beginning of my LinkedIn feed for 2013 around this time, you'll see all those posts and they have like no traction.
Mm-hmm.
And because it turns out just nobody was really interested in that. And so I kind of gave up for a little while. I pivoted around in my content. What I realized worked really well is to just talk about what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that that works well is that like nobody else is doing what I'm doing. Like
Mm-hmm.
very few people are doing a solopreneur B2B thing. And if I could just be honest and transparent about what's going well and what's not and what I'm learning, that's a great marketing device because people find it interesting. They learn. I'm accountable for what I'm doing because I have to write it. Everybody wins. And
Mm-hmm.
I did not have that working theory at all when I began. I just tried a bunch of stuff, learned what seemed to be working, and then kind of just asked people like, what do you like that I'm doing? And just sort of leaned into the stuff that works
Mm-hmm.
better and moved away from the stuff that didn't work so well in the end.
Yeah, yeah. What I like about the stuff you're posting is that they are humble. I mean, humble in a way that you are not bragging that you are an expert in that area. That, but it's always like, see, this is what I did, or this is what I think it's working, at least for me, and not like there are many people that didn't achieve a lot, but are just talking about hacker growth, hacking growth, etc. So yeah, I like your style. It's not that humble that you are, just putting yourself in a lower position, but it's like you are not, as you said, you're just showing your way. So this is a good stuff.
Yeah, I think there's probably a good general lesson in there too, because I'm very skeptical of the people who offer courses on how to start a great business. Then you look in their background and they actually like never really took off and they make more money on the course than they do on their previous businesses. But as the person who's going to be marketing, yeah, just kind of present what you have and let the audience judge it. Even if the result magnitude is not very
Mhm,
high, you have this unique point of view. Like nobody else has my experience trying to do business psychology and then what I
mhm,
do now. And so you just sort of get to talk to that. And you don't have to copy anybody. You don't have to like overinflate it. It just works all
mhm.
on its own.
Yeah, makes sense. So on the social media, you are mostly talking about, building this product, of course, about the product itself. So it's more, at least from my perspective, it's more like something between like mm, technical leaders, so not necessarily like extreme beginners, and some people that are interested in more than just tech stuff. But on the other hand, on the shadow traffic documentation, at least from my perspective, correct me if your goal is different, like even on the videos, they are highly focused on the developer experience. So is it like intentional, or how you are deciding which people are you targeting, or is it like um, some strategy to have tackle that in a different way?
Yeah, if you picture like a conveyor belt, I kind of try to get everybody on the conveyor belt on LinkedIn or Substack by talking about what I do. And I think that's like the most broad, useful net that I can cast. I can provide a lot of
Mm-hmm.
value there. Some fraction of people who read it are going to have the problem that I solve. And then they'll go to my website, shadow traffic. And from there, it's all product. I try
Yeah.
to keep that extremely focused. Um, and yeah, just do a great job presenting the solution to the problem. And if it's a fit, then I've kind of already built some trust just being prolific on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just kind of picture it as a conveyor belt that sort of moves leads from one end to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully everybody gets valued no matter where they're on the belt.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Um, but what are your thoughts on that? Like, let's say that you have your either some project or product that you'd like to build, and in theory most of the people are saying that you should target those C-level people because they have money, not developers. And here maybe is it like this distinction that we discuss, is it like you're part of the journey? So I'm not saying that this is, I'm not trying to convey that it's your grand plan and you are just sitting and inventing how to reach those people, but definitely I see that there is a bit of thinking behind it. So that's why I'm trying to get a bit deeper, because as I said, on the LinkedIn, it's super interesting, especially that for the person like me that also trying to find their way in this solopreneurship, super cool. But then on the so so potentially that's more reaching, as we said, like those C-level tech leads, but the documentation is really for the developers. So is it like intentional also, or do you think that it's correct that developers are not having this buying decision? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you're kind of touching on like what is the selling motion, and I think for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of developer tools, including mine, they can't succeed unless developers actually use
Mm-hmm.
them and are successful. And so when you build the product, you got to be maniacally focused on making sure that this is, hand in glove fit for developers. And if you
Mm-hmm.
go to Shadow Traffic, go to the docs, I obsess about making it beautiful, making it perfect for software engineers. I don't care at all about making the website look good for an executive or C-level person
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, like if the developer's not happy, I'm dead. Like the deal will not move forward. If you motivate a developer enough, you make them happy enough, you solve enough of their problems, you take away their pain, they will kind of run things up the chain, and then
Mm-hmm.
you go through that selling motion and you get it through to the executive where
Mm-hmm.
they're going to sign the contract to give you some money. But the reason the executive will trust you is not because your website looks nice, it's because their team members trust you. Like there's a transitive trust, and that's kind of the thing that matters the most at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. It's great that you said it because yeah, that was my impression, that when I was looking at the docs, it's like C-level person wouldn't understand, like the even the introduction videos would be scared with the seeing the console. But on the other hand, for the devs, I think I really like the developer experience, and I really like how you show it on the videos. So it's like for the people that didn't see it, I encourage you to check the Shadow Traffic website. But it's like you have the command line that can be run continuously, and that can correct you and suggest that what you did wrong. So you don't need to, in theory, go to the documentation, but you can just learn by using the tool. I think it's a like a really really nice, smooth developer experience.
Yeah, definitely. Whatever tool you're making, don't worry about investors, don't worry about other stakeholders, just make your users happy and the rest will kind of solve itself.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That's a really really good advice. And is it intentional that you didn't follow the current trend of building open source projects? I know that you did some in past. Did you get burned by that, or what is your take on that part?
I didn't get burned. I have done open source almost my entire career. I just
Yeah.
felt like I wasn't really sure what commercial offering I could add on top, just because it was such a raw idea. It was like synthetic data. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I could probably maybe build a bigger company if I had some open source element. But my goals were to just make a living off this and have a
Mm-hmm.
good small business. And probably the most effective way to do that is to just close source and say, you get the software, you pay money, the bugs are completely my problem. You
Mm-hmm.
need not look anywhere else. And I do think all of the past 5 years of open source confusion have kind of made me a little more cautious about it. I mean, every company that started as open source goes through this awkward, ugly duckling phase where they relicense their product, they have it in the
Yeah.
cloud, the community's upset, the vendor's upset that the community's upset, and it's just like I kind of just wanted to avoid that and say like, there's a very clear contract. You're the user, I'm the vendor. Let me just make this completely my problem, and we can handshake in the middle. And I think both could have worked, but this one is just a little bit more aligned with my
Hmm.
actual goals.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, there are some aspects that are open source, like those additional tooling. Like I saw that there is a tool for trying to find out how and what to seed based on the database schema, for instance. That's nice. Uh, so yeah, it's aligned with what I have. Although I'm still doing a lot of open source. My even running joke is that I'm earning money through consultancy for my open source passion. uh, yeah, but to be true, I would like to do it in a more way that you did. So having, I like this clear message that yeah, this is what you get and this is what you should expect. I think it's quite fair. Uh, I think that the common model, at least to some degree, in open source space is that you don't think about making your tool a product. You are trying to build it, grow it, and then maybe sell it to some better and bigger company, like for instance VC. I saw that you are not extreme fan of this model at this level. What are your thoughts on that? Because you're building everything on your own without any additional foundings, at least based on my knowledge.
Yeah, I'm 100% bootstrapped. I don't have really a problem with VC funding. Obviously, you need it to do certain things. Like you're just going to need investors to go build
Hmm.
a really big data warehouse or something like that. But I think a lot of founders just fall into this trap, and I did on my first company, is you raise a bunch of money and you say like, well, we're smart, we'll figure it out later. And then you build some products and then nobody kind of comes to get some, and you have all this money to burn and you feel like you have all the time in the world, but like really you're wasting time. And if you can actually decrease your resources and increase your pressure on figuring it out, like you can have a sound business earlier. And that was part of the motivation. Like I wanted to have a profitable business early. I didn't want to go spend more money than I was making. And yeah, you have to account for like, what's the cost of your time and all that salary. But like as far as like economic profit, I actually just think it's a really good idea to just sort of look at how can I make more money than I spend, like as
Hmm.
soon as possible. Particularly in this tech climate. I mean, it's harder to raise money now than it was 5 or 6 years ago. It's better to just focus on your fundamentals and come up with a good business model.
Hmm. So my guess is that you weren't extremely passionate about seeding the test data, but definitely you were for a longer time in this event-driven space, or as you said, the Kafka around surroundings. So was that choice some sort of choose the boring tech stack for you? I mean, for some people it might not be boring, but boring in a proper sense. I mean, like in other words, so selecting tech stack and reusing the knowledge that you already have. Was it that type of choice, or
I
maybe
think
you
anytime you
were
can like
passionate about seeding data?
I'm not like this isn't the area that like I wake up and say this is my life's work. I just wanted to run a company and I like making people happy and solving their problems. And so I saw people who had a problem and I was like, I can help with that. And I'd say like my passion for the area has grown over time and that the more people I help solve their problems, the happier that makes me because that's really what I want to do. And I think ironically, like it helps to be a little bit detached and like if you're just obsessed with this idea that you're going to spend years on end, it becomes much harder to see it for what it is and make the changes that you need to be a success. Whereas I kind of rolled up and I was like, hey, I'm going to do a startup a quarter until we succeed. And it didn't really matter to me which one it was. I had a list ready to go. And I think if you can have that detachment, it's just a lot easier to see things for what they are and make changes as needed to become a success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how you are nurturing this feeling to not get too much into this idea, because initially it might be like, yeah, okay, I'm not super passionate, it looks like a valid choice, but then as you go it might appear that this this percentage, you will be more and more passionate on what you're doing because you get this initial traction. So how to nurture this sane perspective and sane view of this idea and how is it going. I think it's quite important because there is this trap in the startup that the startup is already bringing money, but it's not, you know, it's, you can see that it won't take you much further than that. So what would be your advice to, you know, be able to reevaluate where you are and are you going with the correct way and not getting over passionate on your idea?
It's hard because, like you said, passion grows over time. If you have a little success, it feels great. You want to keep going, and you kind of know sunk cost fallacy is like a thing, but you don't
Hmm.
really want to think about it. I think kind of the solution to these problems are is just goal setting. You have to sit down and say, like, why am I doing this? Like, what do I want to get out of it? And I try to write down my long-term goals. I do this because I want to see how good of an entrepreneur I can become. I want to increase my skills. I think this is the fastest way to do it. And then I also wrote down, like, what do I need monetarily in a year or 2 years for this to be like worth it? And there's a number, like everyone can sit down and say, like, oh, if I made $100, is that worth it? No, probably not. If you made like $1 million, is that worth it? Definitely. And you just have to figure out what your number is in the middle. And then I think you have to revisit that goal constantly. Like I look at my goals every workday. I start the day, I just sort of look at like what are my goals and why am I doing it? And that keeps me anchored. If I feel like there were times when I wasn't sure I was going to hit my revenue goals for the year. And if I didn't, I was like, well, I don't know, maybe this isn't worth it. And you can always say to yourself, like, okay, if I don't hit the goals that make this sustainable, I'll just go pick another idea. Like I
Yeah.
said, just being detached and saying like it doesn't need to be this one, it could be another one. Or I could take a break and go get a good market salary job. And but I think it does come back to goal setting and just being honest with yourself about why it is that you're actually doing this.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So being focused on what you want to achieve, is it correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the concise way to say it.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. And do you think that you can keep such focus if you're doing that on a half-time or part-time basis? Or how long can you do it for part-time? Because are you you are working on that full-time, right?
I'm full time on this. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you do,
Um,
do you think that it's possible to, you know, bring the idea? I mean, technically everything is possible, that, but from your perspective, like to keep the proper focus.
I think it just depends on who you are and what you want. I saw this Rick Rubin quote recently. He's a big music producer, talks
Yeah.
a lot about creativity, and he was talking about how your job and your passion don't need to be the same thing. Like if for whatever reason either it doesn't monetarily work out or it's just like not the right time in the market, like there's no harm in having a job and then also on the side like follow your dreams and follow your passion. And if that's the case for you, like great, go do that. And if they are the same like they are in the case for me, that's fine too. But I don't know. It sounds like a lot of situational things about do you have enough time? Do you have enough drive? And I think if you have enough drive, you kind of find a way to make it to work.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, about the passion, I also had the sentence that the best thing to ruin your passion is to start earning money on it.
That sounds spot on, actually.
Okay. So about earning money, so how to make the first deal? Because I heard that unless you make the first deal, then you cannot know that the your idea is worth anything. So do you have some guidance, or maybe can you share how you closed the first deal, or one of the first deals? What were the needed steps from the idea, even the pre-validated idea, to getting this first paying customer?
Yeah, it's kind of like, everybody has a description of how to validate a product idea, but the only real validation is paying customers. And
Yeah.
it is important to eventually get paid for your work. Yeah, just to kind of extend what I was saying earlier, I went on social media, I reached out to everybody that I knew about the problem. I kind of tried to describe what I was doing. I put up that landing page, and then everybody I could possibly talk to, anybody who had the pain currently, had budget to solve the problem and had urgency. I found just a couple of those of the 100+ people that I talked to. Fortunately, two of those very quickly worked out and they turned into customers. But um, I think like when you're kind of at the beginning, you're like, well, how am I going to convince customers that my solution is good. It's sort of the reverse. You're actually more in a discovery and a finding exercise where you want to find people who already know they've got the problem, have some dollars to spend on it, and they need to do it now. And if you find that, you actually don't need all that much technique to close the deal. You just need to convince them that you're trustworthy, that you can build this, and then because they're motivated, they want to solve their problem. And that's what I did. I talked to a ton of people. I found two companies pretty quickly that had the problem. I had part of the solution. I was very transparent. I was like, I'm pretty early. I'm validating the idea. Let me basically build the rest with you to solve your problem. And if it all works out, I would love it if you'd be a customer. And
Hmm.
that worked out. I had two customers within the first 4 months just using that technique. And yeah, you don't have to be the smooth talker. You just got to find the person who's got the pain, fix it. And then if they're truly in a position to, um, if it's a real problem, they're going to pay for the solution because it's important.
And did you have your own struggles on asking people to pay for your work? I know that it sounds weird, but I know that many people, including me, at least in past, have such struggles. Like it's fine if you're getting money on like your daily job, but if it's something that you like to do, I I mean the other sentence that I heard, that if you are good at something, then you shouldn't be doing that for free. But still, many people are struggling with that. Uh, did you have such feelings in past, or not? Or
Oh, totally. I hate talking about money. It's like my least favorite part. Like I was just saying, you don't have to be a smooth talker to get the deal done, but you do have to propose a number and sort of say
yeah.
what it's worth. And I hate that part. And I think like the way that you solve that is you do enough volume and you learn about it to the point where it's just another skill. And it's starting to become pretty normal for me because I have a good idea of what I'm doing is was worth and how to frame it. And I know the real value because I've seen it in practice. But oh, it's for people like us, it's like it's awful because it's this
Yeah.
weird subject that like our parents were like, and my parents were like, don't talk about money,
Yeah.
don't ask for too much money from people. And it's this weird thing to get over. But yeah, you just try to like my first customer, I tried to be very honest. I was like, look, I obviously don't know what this is worth. Here's my sense. Like, this is what I think it could do for you. If I solve this problem, how much is that worth? And we just tried to work it out. And I think in the beginning, you just want to get a couple customers. They don't need to be paying like the final price you may have in your mind. Just don't get totally ripped off, but make sure they're paying something real. And then yeah, just use the relationship for what it is, like
Mm.
transparency, and um you can keep it pretty low key and get the deal done.
Yeah, yeah. I also would like to second what you said about being honest and just working with the people. Like I'm building right now my open source tooling, and I have one potential first company that is testing this tool. And of course it had some performance issue, but when they saw that I'm proactive, when I'm trying to help them and I'm providing solution, then quite often that's good enough, so people will understand that stuff are not perfect. And some people want to select something new because they think that it can be innovative or more fine-tuned for their needs.
Yeah, and mistakes are actually a wonderful way to build trust. You might enter this thinking like, okay, if I ship a bug, they're gonna hate me. People tend to understand, but your ability to fix it fast is like this wonderful thing where like, oh, something bad happened and now it's even better. Like, oh, I like this person more than I did yesterday. And yeah, they don't always need to be negative things. They could actually be quite positive situations.
Yeah, yeah, that reminded me of the of the best type of admins. So those, in theory, those that are going to vacation and no one see that they went. But the most praise are those that are leaving stuff under fire. Then they are getting back and solving magically everything that they left in the middle of the fire. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
that's counterintuitive and maybe not extremely fair, but yeah. Okay, okay. That makes total sense to me. Um, so we were talking a lot about the building products, even selling, even money. Even though we said that we don't like to talk about money, but you are engineer, so is shadow traffic for you like interesting technical challenge, or are you also basing on the stuff that you learned? So could you share some insights on how is it built in internally inside, or what were the biggest challenges to to go forward?
Yeah, it's a pretty simple architecture. So shadow traffic is basically a stateless, dependency-free Docker container. You give it a configuration file that basically says this is what my data looks like, and this is where it should go to, and then it kind of figures out the rest. And inside of it, it's basically like I described to people, it's a compiler and a runtime. So you describe in JSON what your data should look
Mm-hmm.
like, and it basically searches that tree for data, compiles functions inline, and then actually has a runtime to put all that into a hot path and run it in a really efficient way. The architecture, I think, and the design is really, really cool. It's simple, but it uses a lot of functional composition. It uses a lot of tricks to do kind of ahead of time work to keep the hot path really, really fast. And there's a lot of extensibility. Like one of the bigger challenges is that when you generate data, there's all kinds of data that you may want to generate. You may want to do scalars, collections, geolocation data, state sequences, parallelism, all kinds of cool things. And trying to support all that at once is actually kind of hard. And so you have to come up with a design that extends itself in all kinds of different directions and balancing that with not spending all day there and actually going and doing the sales and the marketing work. And so building enough for it to be like truly good enough. And yeah, that's like the very, 30,000 foot view of basically how it works. And I find it really cool because I work on it, but it's not like I'm working on a large distributed system. It's a bounded technical scope.
Yeah, yeah. For me, there are like I already mentioned this developer experience stuff. So you just change the config, and automatically you get the quick feedback loop. So my guess is that this is this recompilation part of the configuration that you are providing, but also it's for me it's quite impressive that you also mentioned that people can use this tool even for load testing, and to have that you need to have really efficient way uh, to provide this test data. So I think that I mentioned that you are humble, and now you are a bit too humble about that. But yeah, it's interesting stuff.
I did have this finding. So in the beginning, I thought I had a tool for demo data. I realized over time, I thought load testing was totally out of scope, but I've realized what people actually want from a load test tool is something that looks like their customer workload.
Yeah.
But many load test tools are actually just good for chucking bytes at a cluster, which is not really representative of what your customers are actually doing. They tend to skew their data in a certain way, or they have different patterns. And
Mhm.
these two worlds have actually kind of come together. And I won't say I have the fastest load testing tool in the world. I certainly don't, but I have optimized it enough to be useful for that regard. And
Mhm.
it's cool to see companies take a configuration file, use it for like a demo or for sales purposes, and then the engineering team can use that to basically benchmark their cluster and say, okay, let's turn the knobs up and make it go really, really fast and see how that workload performs over time, because you're really just a lot more customer focused in that way, and it's a better way to operate.
Yeah. So in one of my past projects, we had uh, continuously working synthetic tests that were simulating on the production environment, the user traffic, and it was super helpful for us. We were able, thanks to that, of course, together with the observability, etc., we were able to catch even like the performance degradation, that some new deployment caused some unexpected issue. But on the other hand, it was quite tricky. I mean, we had even simpler stuff than you. We had just a bunch of tests working in some uh, cron that were, looking like real users, but it was still helpful. So do you have like, because you, as you mentioned, you have already those different types of data, geolocation, different text base, etc. Are you also have this, do you also have this feature that allow to, send the data in a different schedules or different ways, or is it just part of the roadmap?
Yeah, there's actually orchestration built into it. This is one of the things I worked with some customers on earlier in the year, and it's really cool because very often you'll say, I want to seed this data into this
Mm-hmm.
table, and then I want to put this data into Kafka using these three different topics, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe when that's done, I want to do this other thing. And that orchestration piece, I was actually a little skeptical about doing it, but enough people asked for it. I was like, well, obviously you should do it. Is a really interesting thing to bake in. It shadow traffic basically builds a directed acyclic graph of kind of the things it needs to do over time, and it has a little scheduler in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I'm constantly kind of pushing the sophistication of what it can do, and it's this fun game to try to keep the basics really, really simple and friendly and intuitive, while also providing these higher level primitives that all compose together and let you do these really, yeah, really cool things.
Yeah, I also noticed that you already have a lot of different connectors and even some other tooling are having the guidance. Like I saw that warp stream. You were also on one of their streams, uh, warp stream streams, but yeah, on the video. Uh, yeah, it's quite impressive that you managed to build such, I don't know, community or some graph of relationship with the various tooling and various people. It's pretty nice.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think I just try to get out there and talk to a lot of people and be helpful. And I give away the product plenty for free, especially to people who do marketing, because it's win-win where somebody for marketing reasons gets to solve their problem, and then I get my name out there and everybody's happy. It increases your reputation. There's cooler demos out there. It can't be understated how much of starting a company is just talking with people and building your own network and community and that kind of thing.
Mm, yeah, yeah, um, yeah. Let me check. I think one more question around that. Uh, um, yeah. Okay. Um, so what are your next plans with the shadow traffic and maybe your entrepreneurial journey? Are you still planning to be 100% focused on shadow traffic, or you are planning to test your free leftover ideas?
I think I'm going to stick on this one. I'm starting to get to the phase where things are really coming together. I'm getting more leads than I've ever had before, and
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe the whole thing will fail next year or something like that. I don't think so, but like I'm getting busier and busier, and I'm really enjoying the solopreneur journey, figuring out ways to keep my time manageable, and I'm really curious to see what level of revenue I can get to where I just find like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Or maybe I'll sort of tap out and say I need to raise money or I need to hire people or something like that. But I kind of want to push this as far as I can. I know there's plenty of other solopreneurs out there that are doing over 1 million in revenue a year. And
Hmm.
it's certainly not easy to get to, but like I really admire that. I think that's just an incredible thing to do all on your own. It's a unique way to push yourself. And so yeah, I want to chase in their footsteps and see how far I can get.
Hmm. Yeah, I will keep my fingers crossed. Maybe we will have the next chance, like to talk about how to make a multi-million company with a one person. That would be cool.
We'll
Uh,
see. I think it's cool that it has been done before, so it's not like it's a total pie in the sky.
yeah, yeah. I like the idea. I also intentionally working on my own. Uh, I started like 2 years ago, although I'm more in a consulting than product building. I'm moving into that, but yeah, it's worth it. At least maybe not precisely on the wage level, but on all the other levels, definitely. So as
I
long
agree.
as it's balancing in a proper way, then that's, I think, fine.
Totally
Uh,
agreed.
so what would be your, like, we discuss a lot and you gave already a lot of guidance, but if you could like sum it up, like what would be your advice for people like that were engineers and that are thinking about the building the one person business? So how to on building products and marketing and selling, like what would be your strategy or advice to those people?
Just start. Like you're never gonna feel like you're ready for this. You're always gonna feel like I have to read another book or take another course or talk to another friend or something. So just start. Be ready to make a bunch of mistakes. Be ready to iterate. Pick problems. Don't pick solutions. Kind of pick problems that you see. Try to pick communities because it bounds the search scope of where you're gonna find people. Um, try to sell it before you build it. Try to find early customers as fast as humanly possible. Develop a bit of a radar for separating out people who are momming you and people who are actually like serious paying customers. And just enjoy it. Like know why you're gonna do it. And yeah, don't think about it as your job for the next 40 years. Think about it as something you want to do for a month or two or six or 12. And in that context, it's not so scary. It's just something you can go do, start it today or tomorrow, and one little step at a time.
Yeah, that's I really I love it. I love it. So do you think that making yourself a challenge as you did is a good way to do it? Like, start setting a specific a few weeks deadline and just pushing yourself into delivering something in that span?
I think it's a good idea. I wouldn't try to compare yourself to anybody else. I fall trapped to this all the time where I think, oh, there's this other person who's doing this much money in this much time. Why aren't I like that? And it's a terrible mindset to have. It's human nature to do, but like I do think the idea of saying like let's ship fast and let's iterate fast, that's a great idea. You kind of pick the timeline that works for you. For me, 12 weeks was about right. I don't think I could have done it much faster, but it really pushed me to my limit. I think deadlines are a fantastic way to get moving.
Yeah. I think that they are the best way, although not necessarily the most healthy way to do it, but
Yeah, they could take a toll, take a rest after you hit a big deadline for sure.
yeah, yeah. I really like it. Um, yeah, okay. So I think that we are close to 1 hour. So I really happy about the talk. I think that it will give our community a lot of food for thoughts and a lot of specific motivation. One more question. If you would like to if you had the chance to change something in this journey with shadow traffic, what would you change? Or is it something that you would change?
The only one thing jumps out in my mind. I would have tried to close the first deal earlier. I got caught up in trying to sort of perfect the contract and the numbers, and that was really dumb. I kind of course corrected that quickly, but like the only mistake I made was just close the first deal quickly. Don't like until you get the first one, nothing else matters. So that's the only thing where I was like, I probably would tweak that and get a couple
Yeah,
weeks of my life back.
yeah. And about the legal stuff, do you think that you know, I and not only legal, but if I think that if you are a single person business and single person company, then is this the area that you should pay someone for
Oh,
providing
get a
you
lawyer,
advice?
please. Yeah. I think it's such like so normal to have a lawyer for these kinds of things that I don't even count them as part of the team. It's just somebody you pay
Yeah,
hourly to help you navigate these challenges. Never, write a contract yourself, or if you're not sure what the red lines on the contract mean, get professional help with that sort of thing.
yeah. My guess is that similar can be with accounting and all the stuff that you not necessarily want to be focusing on.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not sure what you're doing with money and contracts, definitely get professional help. I do want both.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you, thank you. It was a great talk. I also learned a lot. I also wanted to get some of your ways of thinking about that. And yeah, thank you a lot from the community. And personally for me, it was really a lot of pleasure talking to
Well,
you
thank
today.
thank you for having me. Thank you for the thoughtful questions. I had a lot of fun with this one.
Okay, okay. So I will stop the recording, and for the folks that are rewatching that, please send Michael on social, etc., some messages or to me, and I will pass it on. Thanks.
Thanks, Oscar.